Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Around the Big Ten podcast. I am Mark Givler, joined as always by Chip Minnick. Chip, we are second to last week of the season now. We are a week away from rivalry week. So in the SEC, this is what will be known as Chicken Shit Saturday. But since we are a Big Ten podcast, there are real conference football games being played. So we get to talk about some real football games here up north. A couple interesting games this weekend. It's not the greatest slate we've had all year, but there are some games with some intrigue. One game that's going to have, I think, major playoff implications. We'll get to that in a minute. But big noon kickoff. 12 is this week is Rutgers and Ohio State. Rutgers trying to get bowl eligible. They need a win at some point in their last two games here. They are 5-5 right now. Ohio State, of course, is number one at 10-0. 32.5-point favorites. A lot of questions right now about Ohio State's injury report, what that's going to look like on Saturday morning, who's going to play, who's going to be held out, how long they're going to play certain guys. What do you expect here on Saturday? And will maybe the short, not the short, but just, will the injury list and maybe the quick hook, I guess, is what I'm looking for on maybe some key players. Is that something that we need to be paying attention to in terms of Rutgers? And are they overlooking this? Like, is the focus in the right place with Michigan looming next week?
I do believe that the focus is in the right place for Ohio State. Everything that I've heard from Ryan Day, I kind of get the impression that he is expecting Rutgers to pull out all the stops. That's kind of what they do, especially on the special teams side. And as far as your other question as it related to the injury front, I think I genuinely, maybe I'm being naive. I realize that, there have been injuries in the past for Ohio State football that have lingered and have been more of an issue. Like the most prominent coming to mind is Jackson Smith and Jigba a few years ago that just lingered throughout the season. I genuinely believe that Ryan Day is really being cautious when it relates to Carnell Tate as well as Jeremiah Smith. You talked about like the quick hook with, I'm going to presume here with like Julian Sand. I think the mindset is let's win this game. It doesn't have to be pretty. It doesn't have to be anything fancy. And let's get our guys out. The fact that it's senior day and this is not meant to be disrespectful to any of the players on Ohio State's roster or disrespectful to Rutgers. I think if you're Ryan Day, all right, you get the lead, and here's where, okay, Eli Brickhandler, thank you for coming, and I'm being completely serious. Getting him a few snaps. I think if there are walk-on players that are seniors, getting them snaps, and this is, from the mindset of, this. I realize there's like you said, like a 32-point spread. Maybe Ohio State doesn't cover it, but who cares? You're all you have to do is just get to Ann Arbor undefeated and make sure everyone is healthy. And I really do think it's going to be kind of a game that focuses on running the ball and just getting people out of the game without any further injuries.
Yeah, he's definitely going to play it cautious on that front. What I'm curious to see is kind of how they look in the first quarter, 25 minutes of the game, because on one hand, yeah, you can establish the run and try and shorten the game that way. On the other hand, would he maybe, they did this a little bit last week. They came out and did a little bit of tempo. And I'm just wondering, would they come out just firing in that first quarter to try and get up like 21-0 or something like that? And then they can kind of pull it back, rein it in, and get guys out or get deep in the rotations, whatever it might be, to kind of protect their stars. And so I'm going to be curious how he approaches the first half of this game, because I know what he wants to do in the second half. He wants the lead, and he wants to grind this thing out in as few plays as possible and get as healthy as possible for Michigan. But I am going to be curious kind of what the strategy is the first few series in terms of how aggressive they are. If they try and take some shots and try and just quickly, if you can get 2 or 3 quick scores, you can kind of, play the rest of the game the way you want to play it. On the Rutgers end, yes, I mean, fake kicks, fourth down, attempts. I see Greg Schiano. doing what Greg Schiano does in these types of games and kind of throwing everything but the kitchen sink at the Buckeyes. But I just don't, this isn't the typical Rutgers defense we've come to know. They've always kind of played good defense, and then it's kind of like, well, can the offense help them out? And this isn't the same type of Rutgers defense we've seen the last few years. I think they have a really hard time on Saturday, regardless of what Ohio State's injury situation actually is. And so again, covering, I don't know. I mean, I hate, I don't even like acknowledge point spreads that big. Like when it's that big, it's like, why would you even put yourself through that as far as betting on something like that? But I think Ohio State's going to win pretty comfortably. The other noon game, there's only 2 noon games, so that's kind of interesting. The other noon game on Saturday on Big Ten Network is, it's got some implications in the Big Ten standings and in the bowl hierarchy. We got 6-4 Minnesota, 4-3 in the Big Ten at 5-5 Northwestern, 3-4 in the Big Ten. So they're playing for position in the Big Ten. Northwestern's trying to get bowl eligible. Northwestern's a 3.5-point home favorite. Is that right, Chip? Northwestern's a 3.5-point favorite against Minnesota. Boy, they're really they getting a little extra credit for that Michigan game last week.
I think they are getting extra credit. Here's something that I wasn't aware of until earlier this week, and this is not meant to slam Northwestern by any stretch, but every time they've played at Wrigley Field, they've lost. This is a Wrigley Field game, and this is the kind of thing where I guess the reason I'm kind of stammering over this is that you don't know what Minnesota team is going to show up. I mean, like Minnesota, now granted, I think Oregon is one of the juggernauts of the Big Ten, so no disrespect going out there and being handled, but Minnesota has not played well on the road. And so it's just one of these things where I think Northwestern, they can, as long as they have the right frame of mind, I think that they can win the game. But I'm leaning Minnesota here just for the simple reality. I think that they offensively have more than what Northwestern is capable of keeping pace with.
Yeah, it's a weird game. Like, I think Minnesota's best football this year has been much better than anything we've seen from Northwestern. But I think Northwestern's worst football this year has been much better than what we've seen out of Minnesota's worst football. Like when Minnesota's good, they're really good. And when they're bad, they're really bad. There has not been a lot of in between with Minnesota this year. So it's like, which Minnesota team's going to show up on Saturday? But I am going to take Minnesota, certainly straight up, and 3.5, I think is a nice little number there. But I think it's going to be low scoring and ugly.
Yeah.
Probably not too different from the Michigan Northwestern game last week, which I read something, and I don't know if it's true because it wasn't like an official media source, but I read something that Michigan was the first team ever to win a -5 turnover differential game. I don't know if that was like in Big Ten history.
Right.
I can't imagine it's in the entire history of college football. So maybe it was Big Ten history, but it was some crazy stat that was thrown out that I saw on social media that said like no one had ever, Michigan did, it was like a first to win with a -5 turnover differential. So, so if that happens again, if Minnesota's -5, well, they're definitely going to lose. But I think this will come down to a turnover or two, one way or the other, which team makes the big mistake. And look for something pretty low scoring. But yeah, I'll take Minnesota as well. Game of the week, 3:30 CBS. Probably the game. I mean, is this the game of the week in college football?
I think so. I think so.
I think it is too. Number 15 USC at number 7 Oregon. Both are 6-1 in the Big Ten. Obviously, both are hoping for a playoff berth. Oregon a 10.5-point favorite at home. I tend to believe USC is out if they lose this game. I don't think I shouldn't say with certainty, but I think they're likely out if they lose this game. Oregon, Oregon's an interesting case. I think Oregon's really good. I think Oregon's one of the 3 or 4 best teams in college football. a lot of the national media is on them right now. Like they haven't beat anybody. They're this and that with their schedule, and losing to Indiana, kind of, the way they did, which I didn't think was that bad, but they're getting a lot of disrespect nationally, and I'm trying to figure out why. Because they have a disruptive defense, they have weapons on offense. They have, in my mind, the quarterback currently in college football who will be drafted the highest, whether it's this draft or next draft, in Dante Moore. So why are they having to defend themselves? And why are people saying if they lose this game that they're probably out of the playoff? I've heard people have the opinion that if Oregon goes 10-2, they're out of the playoff.
Yeah, I think, I mean, to answer your question, I think there's just a lot of disrespect about Oregon. And I agree with you. I didn't think losing to Indiana is a bad thing, but I think that there's just a lot of still kind of snobbishness towards Indiana and the fact that, okay, how dare you crash the college football playoff last year, and you're not worthy with that weak non-conference schedule. So the fact that Oregon lost to them, as well as the fact that Oregon, when they went on the road and beat Penn State in double overtime, Penn State at the time was highly ranked, but now obviously all the drama that surrounded Penn State. So I think that's just that might be just kind of, I could be completely mistaken, but I agree with you. I think Oregon, talent-wise, they have the roster and the means to not only get into the college football playoff, but wreak havoc on it. Whoever gets in their way, I would not look at if you get scheduled to play the Oregon Ducks, think that that's going to be a summer picnic by any stretch of the imagination. So I like Oregon here. Looking at Oregon's roster, I mean, we've talked about it before. When I look at USC, their Achilles heel is on the defensive side of the ball, especially when it comes to running the ball. With Oregon, you've got guys like Noah Whittington, Jordan Davison, De'Aaron Hill, and I just think I'm not suggesting that Oregon is just going to kind of go 3 yards in a cloud of dust, but I think if I was in the Will Stein game plan mindset is, all right, hey, we can tire these guys out, and then that's going to just open up the play action passing game for us. So I like Oregon to win this game. And then on the flip side, yeah, I think USC, you have to have the very honest conversations about USC probably falling out of the college football playoff.
Yeah, I think USC, if they lose, is going to need a lot of help. A lot of help. And it was funny, though. I saw Illinois jumped up pretty high into there, where it's like, okay, you win these last two and let everybody else, because they'll jump USC.
Correct.
If USC loses to Oregon, they will jump USC. And so it's going to be interesting. But yeah, that's kind of why, like, I think USC is probably out if they lose, because they're not going to be, if they were positioned as like the highest, if they were positioned as like the highest 3-loss Big Ten team, I would say the highest 3-loss Big Ten team's got a shot. But they're not going to be positioned that way because of their loss to Illinois, because Illinois is going to have 3 losses. And Illinois, of course, was able to win that game. So now the question could be, I guess, now if Michigan's in there and you got Michigan, USC, and Illinois all with 3 losses, well, how? Because, USC beat Michigan. So, like, how does that all come together? But it's going to be interesting to see how it goes. But I just don't think USC is going to win that battle of Big Ten 3-loss teams in the eyes of the committee. So, yeah, it's going to be interesting. I think Oregon, I don't think it's going to be like a total blowout, but I do think Oregon's going to win comfortably. So I think Oregon's going to win by like 2 touchdowns. I don't think it's going to be like down to the wire field goal at the end of the game. I think Oregon's going to win by about 2 touchdowns. I think they've got just too much offense for USC. I think they'll be able to get a pass rush and do enough to keep you. That'll probably be pretty high scoring, would be my guess, unless the weather's terrible. But, I think Oregon will be able to do enough to maybe cause some turnovers, disrupt things enough, and then I think their offense will have a really good day against the USC defense. They'll get the win, but this may be the best thing for Oregon, because everyone was just I don't know, are people like embarrassed by like what happened last year where they were all over Oregon all year and then Oregon got just massacred by Ohio State and they're like mad at Oregon for making them look dumb. So now they're like going to downplay them this year. But this may be the best thing for Dan Lanning and Oregon is to have this disrespect, this doubt about them, because I think coming in is like, maybe they get a home game in the first round, but they have to play somebody and they have to play a wild card game or whatever. I think this could be the best thing for them in terms of the motivation they need to make a deep run in the playoff.
I agree. I completely agree. I never thought about the fact that there might be some kind of lingering resentment. That's another good angle.
Yeah. So we'll see what happens, but I'll be glued to that one at 3:30 on Saturday afternoon. Also 3:30 on Fox Sports 1. Michigan State still winless in the Big Ten, 3-7 overall at 6-4 Iowa, maybe the most impressive 6-4 team in the country in terms of their resume, in terms of their 4 losses, how they've happened, who they've happened to. Iowa's a 16.5-point home favorite. Michigan State desperately looking for this first Big Ten win. I don't think they're going to get it, but maybe Iowa's just. We're going to find out something about Iowa. Like, have they reached the breaking point where it's like too many heartbreakers against really good teams? Now they're out of the playoff race. Do we see that inspired performance on Saturday that they're going to need, to avoid the upset?
I'm going to go with Iowa here. I just think Michigan State, it's just been a season to say that it's been a season marked by disappointment would be a tremendous understatement. I'm still firmly in the camp of Jonathan Smith. I have not wavered. I think it would be a mistake for Michigan State to move on from him. I mean, better than I may be mistaken, but I think we're less than 2 weeks out from the early signing period beginning on December 3rd. So when it comes to recruiting as well as the transfer portal, let's not ignore that. I think these schools need to kind of make their mind up definitively now. Like Maryland, did that this week. And I know we're talking about Michigan State and Iowa here, but I really do think Michigan State needs to stay the course. But I do believe that Iowa, it may not be a real exciting game, but I think Iowa has enough to win this game and improve their bowl game destination.
Yeah, I've just seen nothing out of Michigan State the last few weeks that makes me think they're going to be able to go in there and pull this off. They've just been so it's just they're clearly they're playing worse now than at the beginning of the year. I don't know what's going on, at the quarterback position with, kind of what they've done there, which you look at like Aiden Childs' numbers and you're like, well, he's 10 touchdowns to 3 interceptions. He's 63% completion, which is up from last year. The touchdown interception ratio is much better. They've made some change. Like, I don't know what's really going on there. I'm less bullish on Jonathan Smith today than I was in August, but I'm still at the point of, I don't think you want to be in this head coaching market right now with all with all the jobs that are open, with all the big name schools that are going to be looking, and just several other schools that are kind of on their tier or slightly above looking. I think next year's the market you want to be in if you're Michigan State. I really do. All right. So then at 4:00 on Big Ten Network, we get Michigan at Maryland. Michigan's a 13.5-point road favorite. Obviously, they're sitting there at 8-2, 6-1 in the Big Ten, number 18 in the country. Maryland 4-6, 1-6 in the Big Ten. Maryland needs a win to get bowl eligible. Chip, you didn't like what you saw out of Michigan last week. Here they are again on the road. Maybe a desperate Maryland team. Upset alert?
Yeah, I'm going to say it's upset alert simply because, and you can please correct me if I'm mistaken. I have not seen a lot of. I mean, we were talking earlier about the Ohio State injury front. On the Michigan injury front, when I realized that Justice Haynes is going to be out of this game, but Jordan Marshall at the tail end of that Northwestern game, they had some injury concerns about him. And the flip side of not looking beyond Maryland, it's like, to Ohio State, it's like, okay, do we really want to put Jordan Marshall in harm's way when we have this big game that we are going to need him against Ohio State for? Now that puts Michigan in a tough spot. I really do, because, and I'm gonna butcher the young man's name. It's not intentional. Bryson Kudzal, who, okay, so now I would presume would be next man up at tailback. And I believe that I also saw, some other, options that they were toying with at, I think even like Max Bredesen, fullback. And that's not meant to slam either of those young men. It's just that, all right, when your offense is built around running the ball and your quarterback has been struggling, as evidenced by the turnovers last week against Northwestern, I think if you're Michigan, you're all right. You are going to lean into 3 yards in a cloud of dust. Somehow, somewhere, Bo Schembechler will be smiling at kind of a limited game plan. Maryland is very weak defensively, but Maryland also, their strength is Michigan's Achilles heel, which is, okay, Maryland can throw the ball. So I think this is going to be a close game, but Michigan wins it.
I'm kind of in the Iowa-Michigan State camp on this one, where I think under different circumstances, I could see this being scary for Michigan. I just haven't seen anything out of Maryland the last few weeks. They're playing. They've just seemed to have fallen apart. And maybe Michigan coming in and they're trying to get bowl eligible. Maybe that lights some type of spark here. But I think Michigan's defense is probably going to strangle their offense, and it's going to be ugly. And it's going to be one of those games Michigan wins by like 10 points, but like you never feel like Maryland's actually in the game or has a chance to win it. Mm-hmm. But that's kind of how I see it playing out. I just can't trust what I've seen out of Maryland the last few weeks. But then again, I'm always wrong about Michigan. So go ahead and take your 13.5 on Maryland if you're watching this. 7:00 NBC. This one's interesting for me. Nebraska, 7-3, 4-3 in the Big Ten, at 4-6, 1-6 in the Big Ten. Penn State, who finally got their first Big Ten win last week. Penn State's a 7.5-point home favorite against the man many thought was going to take over for James Franklin after the season. Wow, the Matt Rule Bowl. Who you got?
I'm gonna go with Penn State. I think it's going to be a close one. I think Nebraska with TJ Lateef at quarterback, I think that they have probably been spending as much time as possible leaning into the things that he is most comfortable running offensively. But I just think Penn State, I think that they finally realized, okay, it doesn't have to be exciting, but we've got a two-headed monster at running back, pretty solid defense. We're at home. And I just think, I think this might be, if not, I'm not backing down from what you said earlier about the Oregon USC game being the game of the week. This is the second game of the week. I would say this is the second one that I think is going to have a few more storylines to it, just because, what's going on with the Penn State coaching search and Nebraska. Are you going to finish strong? And, are these Penn State players going to have enough in the tank to get themselves to bowl eligibility? Nebraska's already there. So I think this is going to be worth tuning into.
Yeah, I agree. I think it's going to be a very interesting game. I like what I've seen out of Penn State in terms of like buy-in, effort level. It feels like they are trying to play for Terry Smith right now. Obviously, Terry Smith's going to coach this to win. I don't know that he's got a great chance of getting the job, but I know that he wants it. So, they're going to get. I think they're going to get a good effort from Penn State. Vegas is having this at 7.5, tells me something. So I'm going to go Penn State. And I think it's been a better year for Nebraska. I think they are trending in the right direction, but I do wonder how the season will sit with the fans. If it's a 4 or 5 loss season, is that Is that good enough in terms of the trajectory? Do they? I just kind of be interested to like poll Nebraska fans after a season like this and be like, okay, where are you at right now with how this is going? But clearly, I think they're better this year.
Mm-hmm.
But it'll be interesting to see if they lose that game, kind of what the mindset of the kind of the fan base is. But 7:30 Big Ten Network. 7-3, number 21 Illinois at 3-7 Wisconsin. Can Wisconsin get another one, Chip? This is a fishy line for me. Only 8.5 point favorite for Illinois on the road at Wisconsin. That is dicey to me.
I'd say I think Illinois rolls. No disrespect. I realize the game is in Wisconsin, but I think Illinois, they recognize the fact that they are a long shot to make the college football playoff, but they're saying there's a chance, in terms of like the whole ranking thing. And I just think Illinois offensively, now Wisconsin, that is their strength, is on the defensive side of the ball. They do play, I'm not saying great, but that is, if there is a strength on the Badgers, is on the defensive side of the ball. But big Luke Altmaier fan. I think that Illinois, they really are playing well. And the flip side of that is Wisconsin offensively. I mean, they're just really tough to watch. So that's why I'm very confident that Illinois is going to win this very comfortably.
Yeah, I'm surprised by this line. I thought it'd be closer to like 2 touchdowns.
Yeah.
12, 13, 14. It's giving me some pause, but I am picking Illinois, but it's giving me some pause on kind of how this is going to play out because, Illinois got all the motivation here. Like they're still in the playoff race, regardless of what you think the percentage chances are. And this is, I personally don't think Brett Bielema would love anything more than to like twist the knife a little bit.
Oh yeah. Without question.
He's not going to be a guy who sits there and looks at this and is like, oh, I'm going to take it easy on my old team. Like he's going to be the guy who's like, I want to bury these guys. I want to twist the knife and show them how good I'm doing here at Illinois.
Oh yeah.
So like, I don't see a real path here for Wisconsin, but we'll see. I mean, they were able to miraculously win that game against Washington recently, but I think Illinois. I'm with you. I think Illinois is going to cruise. That brings us to our last game of the weekend, 10:30 p.m. on NBC. Washington at UCLA. Washington sitting at 7-3 right now. UCLA at 3-7. Saw their bowl hopes dashed last week. 10.5 point favorite Washington. That probably sounds about right. Chip, we've ridden the roller coaster of UCLA football this year. Do they have another like peak here, or is it going to just continue downward here against a Washington team that's out of the playoff hunt at this point, but could still theoretically finish up pretty strong and maybe get themselves into a pretty good bowl game?
I'm going to go with Washington. I haven't seen anything injury related to Nico Imaleva in terms of if he's coming back. And I referenced it earlier, but I think, with UCLA, the whole, and better than I, when it comes to like recruiting, I'm looking more for these programs that have interim coaches that they need to make a decision simply, not so much for this early signing period, but more for the transfer portal, because that's at the beginning of December. And they need to, have a guy in place, a staff in place to try and get as many of the I don't want to say high profile, but as many transfer portal players into their programs as quickly as possible and try to regroup for the later portion. So if I'm UCLA, all right, I think Tim Skipper's done a great job, but I don't think he's going to be the guy. I think whoever's going to be the guy would do well to have Tim Skipper on the staff. But yeah, I think Washington, this is an opportunity for them to improve their bowl game destination.
Yeah, they had a bit of a get-right game against Purdue last week in terms of their offense, which just hadn't been clicking. Even before the Wisconsin game, there were some shaky outings. I think it's going to be another good game for their offense. I think they'll put up some points against the UCLA defense. It's just not very good. You throw in the quarterback questions and lack of great weapons on offense, and it just doesn't feel like a spot where where Washington's going to drop the ball. But so I think the Huskies probably cover, but we'll see. That'll get them to 8-3, and then that sets up the Oregon game there at the end of the year, which will be a big part of our rivalry week discussions and things like that. So that'll be an interesting one there at the end of the year for Washington and Oregon. But I think Washington will handle UCLA. I think UCLA's luck has not luck. I shouldn't say that. I think UCLA's energy has kind of run out. I think they because they played well. I shouldn't say luck, but they got a little bit of a boost, a jolt there, and I just think I think they're crashing now. I think they're coming down. So we'll see. Chip, any parting thoughts here as we head into the second to last week of the regular season?
I just think, my parting thoughts are: don't be surprised if some of the games, it's just kind of especially we touched on it with regards to Ohio State and Michigan. Then it's like, okay, just win and get ready for the rivalry week. And it doesn't have to be anything where so much of a domination as much as just getting out healthy.
Yeah, I mean, because if you're Ohio State, you're in. You can't even bet on Ohio State to not be in the playoff at this point. And then if you're Michigan, no one. Okay, so people might dock you some if you lose. Let's say you beat Maryland by a field goal or something. People are going to be like, "What's going on with Michigan? What's wrong with Michigan?" But at the end of the day, if Michigan beats Ohio State, they're in the playoff.
Yes, they
will get a huge jolt from that. And I think, as a matter of fact, if they beat Ohio State, they're in the Big Ten championship game as well.
Now that, like I said,
so that would have a chance to auto qualify at that point. But next week is where is everything for Michigan, and it's pretty much everything at this point of the year for Ohio State, who really needs to beat Michigan. Ryan Day really needs to beat Michigan again. It's been a while. So those two programs, this week is just survive, and let's not worry about score or how pretty it is or what people say about us afterwards. So we'll see. Very much looking forward to Oregon and USC. Looking forward to the Nebraska Penn State. Looking forward to Illinois Wisconsin. Bielema going back up there. I'm sure that's always a fun time. He always likes to prod and poke people up there, and I'm sure he'll be hearing it from the fans. So we'll see what happens there. But so good week again, because we got college football, some interesting games nationally as well. We'll be back here Monday, and we'll kind of recap the week, and then we'll be getting down to it with rivalry week. So thanks everyone again for watching and listening, and we'll talk to you again here in a few days.